This is a video showing how we taught two different horses to do the air+flexions, which is a type of steering based on targeting. The horse watches how your hand moves and then responds, going in the direction that you asked. You can use the air+flexions to have your horse go any direction or in any series of directions that you would have him do with a lead rope or a bridle. That includes elevating and lowering the head, causing your horse to go forward and backward, pivoting on the hindquarters, pivoting on the front feet, and side passing. Shoulder in and half pass are also quite easy too. The reason we got started teaching the air+flexions is that we just come back from a Craig Stevens intensive. While we were there, we were watching Craig work various horses in hand. We also learned Craig's techniques for giving the aids under saddle. The movements of the hand should be round, fluid, and circular. The first day that I was riding my horse, Q, and working on the circular aids, I noticed that he seemed to be watching my hands. This didn't really surprise me because I recall other trainers, like John Lyons, saying that when riding a horse bridleless, the horse will often cheat and look at your hands, instead of paying attention to your seat and legs. At one point, I reached my hand out to brush something off of my hand, and Q turned in the direction of my outstretched arm. Realizing that this is what was going on, I dropped my reins and did a reverse half halt. To my bewilderment, he actually stopped. What fascinated me about this was that I had in no way been intending to teach him bridleless aids. Because I had only reached out to brush something off my leg, it certainly wasn't my posture or the direction of my eyes that told him where to go. I decided to play around with it a little bit more and found that I could get all of the movements I would normally ask for with reins, without reins, on the first try. I was surprised to see that keeping my hands in the proper position for dressage and making my movements properly small did not seem to hinder Quickdraw's ability to read my aids visually. He wasn't craning his head around to see. He kept his head forward as he normally would and walked with a normal cadence. Another interesting thing about this situation is that Q had not been taught to target. In other words, no one had ever purposefully taught him to follow their hands. This made me wonder if, while we think that most of the time the horses are actually following our touch, they're actually receiving visual aids from our hands.
When Kaylee told me about her experience with Q, I was very intrigued. The next day, I was out working with my Mustang, the dun Kiger that you see in this video. I had been doing the flexions with her through contact, mostly with a halter and lead rope. I got curious and decided to see whether it was the touch that was working or whether it was visual cues that were really communicating with her. So I took the halter off and started using the same motions I had been using with touch, just in the air beside her head, and sure enough, got better results than I was getting through the touch. Having had success with Koa, I decided to use it on several other rescue horses that are highly volatile and often become claustrophobic with a bridle or a lead rope or other pressure around their face. Amazingly, even if they had not already learned the flexions from a contact method, they started to do them off of the visual cues almost right away. This included a BLM Mustang who had only been haltered a handful of times and was not trained to lead or move off of pressure. The most interesting thing to me was the horses that I was teaching without contact seemed to be learning it much more quickly than the horses I had previously taught with contact. My thought on this is that the contact around the face just ends up providing a distraction, which degrades the horse's ability to pay attention to what you're actually trying to communicate. It seems to me that the most important thing at the start is to get the horse understanding that they can do these different movements and how to do them on a cue. For that reason, I'm interested in starting this work in the way that's easiest for the horse to understand. Once the horse understands the movement with a visual cue, it's easy to blend in a touch cue later.
Something that I like about teaching things this way is that it can be very traumatic for a horse who's afraid of having his face handled to have you pulling on it.
In our experience, even if we are as gentle as we can possibly be, through lack of understanding and confusion about what we are asking, a horse who is new to moving off of pressure will have a tendency to throw their head around, causing themselves more distress. A horse's nose and mouth are very sensitive, so whenever we can spare them, we make every attempt to do so. Keeping things as clear as possible is also great for our relationship with the horse, because every moment that they spend in confusion results in loss of trust.
Because we work with so many horses who are rescue animals, we find a lot of value in being able to teach the horse these various movements and not running into situations where we're accidentally pushing a horse through a pain threshold. These movements are very good for building strength, limbering, and rebalancing a horse. They don't do much good, though, if you force the horse to do them, even if accidentally. When horses are bracing against your touch, they move in jerky motions that probably do more damage than good. The horse is bound to move what he knows how to move, instead of figuring out how to do the movement with ease and fluidity. Another thing that I really like about teaching the flexions this way is depending on where you hold your hand, you can change the horse's posture quite dramatically. Holding your hand up, for example, tends to rock the horse's weight upward and backward like it would if you were really holding a rein. The difference is, however, that the horse shifts his own weight up and back, and does so moving into a space rather than moving away from something. Just picture in your own head the difference between trying to move up and away from the floor versus trying to reach up towards the ceiling. It conjures very different responses in your body. Thinking about moving up and away from something requires you to push off and tighten muscles. But if instead you think about maybe trying to peer over a fence or crane your neck up to see something in the sky, the difference is an opening rather than a closing. We don't want our horses to learn to push off of something and use leverage to create their frame. Instead, we want them to learn to move up into an open space. I've been really amazed to find that horses can hold a very collected frame for significantly longer than we ever thought a green horse could when they're doing it on their own.
We don't view these techniques as a replacement for classical training methods, but rather as an augmentation that helps build stronger communication and better relationships. While we're only in the early stages of experimenting with these techniques, we think that they hold a lot of promise, and we're very excited to see how they develop.